Welcome and welcome to a topic that is not always easy to admit about ourselves. So I went to, where was I? CVS, and they had this book on the shelf. It's called How to Deal with Toxic People. And when I saw it, I was like, "Ooh, let me flip through that and see what it says." And as I did, I was like, "Oh, I really need this because there are toxic people in my life, and I would like to know how to deal with them." A lot of the things were like, "Oh yeah, this person is that, this person is that." I had my finger pointing outward, like recognizing the behaviors of other people. I didn't buy it though. So then the next time I went, I picked it up again and I flipped through it, and some of the categories began to resonate with me. And I was like, "Oh, that's one of my behaviors. Oh, and so is that one." I started seeing myself in some of the toxic behaviors. And I was like, "Oh, maybe I need that book." And so then the next time I went, I was like, "I need that book because, I'm in a process where I want to improve. I want to see the things about myself that are toxic to other people. I don't want to be the ways that this book describes." And so I thought, yeah, other people do have toxic behaviors, but so do I. And I don't want to be a toxic person. So let me learn about myself and see, where I need to change. And so as I read through it, like I was marking so much stuff in here, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, we as a people are toxic because we're born into a very toxic world, and we learn toxic behaviors and toxic ways of thinking, and we get caught in like dances with people that's just very toxic, and we don't even know it. That's the hard thing. That's the challenging thing. And we want to point our fingers out and recognize other people's toxic behaviors without looking at our part, that, maybe we are also toxic. So I would like to share in this video about toxic people. I'm just going to share like one chapter, like chapter 1, and this is the many types of toxic people. And I want you to think about maybe the people in your life, like if some of these things you recognize that this is a toxic person, and also be open to recognizing your own behaviors, that maybe you are also a toxic person and that maybe you need to check yourself, before we start pointing our fingers at other people. So I'm going to read some stuff. So if you don't like being read to, I don't know, that might not be for you. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but because I want to also share, I'm going to get very vulnerable and also share things about myself that I have recognized, that maybe you recognize the things also in your own life behaviors. So, a hallmark of toxic behavior is that it frequently keeps one off balance through its inconsistency by deflecting blame or responsibility. So, toxic people are constantly blaming other people and they're not taking responsibility. They play on the goodwill or guilt of others. So, laying guilt trips on people. Outright gaslighting, making others feel as if they are the dysfunctional ones. Toxic traits are often rooted in past trauma or underlying mental disorders that cry out for treatment, not harsh condemnation. So that's one thing that is so important to recognize, is that all of these toxic behaviors, they stem from somewhere. We were not born as spirit beings into this world toxic. We are light beings that are just intelligence, and we are love, and we are all of the beautiful qualities within us. But we come into this very toxic world, and we are like, look how many generations have come before us, and we're like, we got it all. we've got all the behaviors. So it is now our responsibility in this life and in this world and with the way that it is set up for us to recognize these traits, to recognize that all this has been being passed down for a very long time and it's time to stop it, that we don't have to continue it on to our future generations, that we can stop these toxic behaviors. And so it's important to recognize that these toxic behaviors are not us. They are learned behaviors. They are learned, and they're patterns that we experience trauma, and we go into like a safety, protection, survival mode, and we do whatever we can to protect ourselves from being hurt again. That's where it comes from. We don't want to be hurt. We don't want to feel pain. And so if we're putting that outside of ourselves, if we're causing other people hurt, if we're causing other people pain, it's not us. They're not, it's a wall that we create. So it's important to understand that and recognize that so that we can learn to not take it personal when other people are exhibiting behaviors that are toxic. We can like just become very aware of it and become aware of our own toxic behaviors. So if we're blaming others constantly, like if we are not able to take responsibility for our own personal life and we're blaming, pointing the finger at everybody else outside of us, it's everyone else's fault that my life is how it is it? Like truly? Then maybe like we need boundaries. It's just, oh, there is the tiniest little bunny is like, I could put it in my hand. Oh my goodness. And it just ran across. I love that. Okay. So toxic describes interactions where boundaries are often blurred, where individuals themselves and or their behavior are felt to be difficult, challenging, demanding, often adversarial. Toxic relationships are not fueled by mutual care and support, but are often skewed to accommodate an individual's needs and demands. Needless to say, these are not healthy relationships, and often, whether meaning to or not, toxic behaviors chip away at the equality of the participants and corrupt whatever could be good in a relationship. It's just very difficult to be in a healthy relationship with toxic people. Another way to recognize you've got a problem is to notice how interaction with a toxic person makes you feel. No healthy relationship will cause you to feel physically or emotionally drained after spending time together. Reduced confidence in yourself or enjoyment of your life, guilty for not doing more to solve their problems, confused about your boundaries or beliefs, frustrated that your needs, thoughts, and feelings don't matter. So if you're in a relationship with someone who, like, you leave their presence and you feel that way, you might want to, like, recognize that it could be very toxic. You have the right to choose healthy, fulfilling, mutually rewarding, and uplifting relationships, and to drastically limit or end those that don't measure up. And it can be very difficult, especially if you have close relationships and friendships that are like this, especially that you've been in for a very long time. Because what happens, especially in these relationships, is we get in dances with each other and we continue the codependency and the toxicity within the relationships. Because like I said, we just get in a dance. They say that, I say this, and we're toxic to each other. That's what happens. So, exposure to stimuli that cause strong negative emotions, the same kind of exposure you get when dealing with toxic people, it causes our brains to have a massive stress response, whether it's negativity, cruelty, the victim syndrome, or just plain craziness, toxic people drive your brain into a stressed out state that should be avoided at all costs. The toxic environment, like it will affect our system. It'll cause our nervous system to just go into hyperdrive, and it'll make us very anxious. It'll just walk on eggshells. You just don't know what to say or how to say it. You're afraid. There's a lot of fear, that goes along with being in a relationship with toxic people. So there's a lot of different types of toxic people out there. If you have someone who belittles you, humiliates, infuriates, criticizes, controls, like, these people know how to poison situations and relationships, stirring up discord and disarray. So this book, it breaks it down into a bunch of different types of toxic people. And this is where I realized, oh, I am some of these ways. And let me take that back. I am not. I have learned many of these ways of being. And so as I am coming into like truly who I am and recognizing the behaviors that are not me, I realize that I have learned many of these behaviors. And, where do they come from? I mean, it could just be back and from generations, that these are just things that are just passed down. It could be from just society, the society that we live in, school, friends, churches, social media. Like, there's so many ways that we learn and that experience comes from. And so it's just important to recognize that it is not you, that it is a behavior that you've learned. And so since that's the case, you can change it. You're not stuck in it. You don't have to live as a toxic person, but you have to be aware of it and want to change it. So I will be very vulnerable and share with you the ones that like resonated with me and the ones that I have been throughout my life. So the first one that it talks about is the deceiver. Okay. Lies destroy a crucial component of any relationship, which is trust. A person's need to lie is a telling clue about his or her character and emotional health. It may indicate serious insecurity, lack of integrity, or flimsy moral standards. People willing to lie in one situation or with one person will find it easy to lie in other contexts. A person who shades the truth with others will be inclined to be dishonest with you as well. Secrets arouse suspicion. Here's the truth about deceivers. They create mistrust, chaos, and uncertainty. I recognize when reading this that I have been a deceiver. Not that I necessarily blatantly lie. I don't feel as though like I'm a liar. However, what was it? Withholding truth. There are shades of truth. What was it? I'm sorry. I can't remember if it. There's sometimes whenever we hold back from telling other people the full truth because we know how it might affect them, or we're afraid of how they're going to respond, or and it almost feels as though like we're protecting them, but what it is we're protecting ourselves because we don't want to deal with their response and how they're going to react. And, so it becomes like a protective mechanism that is very unhealthy. It's very unhealthy because then it does arouse suspicion. And then it's like, well, how can they trust you whenever you're not a trustworthy person to tell the whole full truth? And so I have created that within my own life and within relationships, just holding back truth. Not that I've been like outright lying, but just withholding and keeping things secret. And yeah, so but it's still it's not a healthy thing, and that is toxic. It's toxic to a relationship to not be open and honest and truthful. So the next one is the control freak. We all know that codependents are the biggest controllers, and this is the control freak. You usually think about a certain person whenever you hear that. Let's see. Whoever it is in your life who is a control freak, you bear the brunt of someone who is uptight, judgmental, and invasive. And that is one thing about control freaks is the judgment. You judge other people's behaviors and things, and you think that they need your help, to fix them because you have judgment about them. These are the people who meddle in your business, tell you how to do things, and hold you to impossible standards. They're quick to point out your shortcomings and always have the right answer, allegedly. They always want to win the argument and have the last word. They know what's best for you and how you should do things differently. I have been that way in my life. I have been a great person to tell other people what they need to do because I know best. But I do not. And so I've learned to stop doing those. But I still catch myself. And I'm like, oh, I am so sorry I said anything. And now I catch myself so quickly and I'm able to apologize immediately and take it back. And I'm just like, that is not my place. I am so sorry. Like, you do you. So here's a few primary characteristics of these controllers. Even if you give the controller what he wants to make him happy, that doesn't mean the bossy behavior will subside. Playing along to get the person off your back rarely works. The controlling person may like you or praise you for doing what she wants, but that's much different than respecting you. Controllers drain your energy and undermine your sense of self-worth. With them, you must take extra measures to preserve your physical and emotional energy. Controllers want power, undue influence over you, and permission to bully you. When you give in to them, you give up a piece of mind, independence, and self-respect. Their words and behaviors are couched as wanting to be helpful or being for your own good, but rarely is their conduct actually helpful or good for you. I have also had other people in my life who are controlling towards me. And so I'm able to recognize that many of us are control freaks. We just are. And it's a very toxic behavior, especially in relationships. Like, we cannot control other people. And so, are you a control freak? So now there is the gaslighter. Like, this is a kind of a buzzword in, the mental health world. A lot of people are like, oh, I was gaslit. Okay, well, so this is a psychological manipulation where the person does or says things that cause you to doubt your own memory, perceptions, or judgment. This manipulative person leaves you feeling that you are the crazy one. It is very crazy to be gaslit. I have been, and I have done. I have gaslit. Like, I recognize that I haven't done it intentionally. Like, I'm not like, oh, I'm going to gaslight. I'm going to like manipulate this. It's their behaviors that are unconscious or subconscious, whichever one. They're behaviors that come from a place of the survival, safety, protection, wanting to protect ourselves. And so it happens. And I think that we are all capable of doing it to each other. Now, there are some people who they just are gaslighters and they do it a lot. And it's a thing. So through it all, this person is eerily adept at projecting a convincing aura of innocence or authority. You doubt what you've just seen with your own eyes. It's like they will make you doubt your own thoughts. I've experienced this, and it's the craziest thing because it's like you can know something for certain, and the other person will make you think that it was not what you know it was. If you try taking this person to task for any of his or her underhanded ways, you may find yourself wondering how you could have been so wrong and so unfair. So then you start to think that it is you. That's the hard thing with gaslighting. Beware if you're around someone and end up constantly second guessing yourself, feeling the need to apologize, wondering if you're being too sensitive, or find yourself afraid to speak up for fear of saying something wrong. This is a tough one. I have experienced this. I have had toxic people in my life do this to me. And it is a very difficult one because it is very crazy making. And it makes you second guess yourself about everything. And it's definitely one that takes time to really heal from and to be able to trust yourself. But whenever you come to an awareness of it and you recognize it, you can see it clearly and you're able to disconnect from it and not allow it to affect you in those ways. So the next one is the angry venter, someone that vents in a very angry kind of way. So anger is a good thing. It's a way of processing our emotions, but so anger itself is not the problem, but the expression of it can be a big problem. Mismanagement of angry feelings and the inability to control heated emotions can quickly become destructive rather than constructive. There's a big difference between anger and aggression. Anger is a helpful physiological response to something that is wrong. Jesus got upset in his temple. He had a physiological response. Aggression is a harmful response to anger, lashing out in revenge and ridicule, sometimes escalating into verbal or physical abuse. Angry venters have a pattern of heated verbal rants that might also involve physical actions such as throwing objects and pounding a wall. I've seen people hit walls and bust holes in the walls, slamming doors, just throwing plates down. Once started, these rants don't seem to diminish, gathering steam until other people in the vicinity become alarmed and frightened. Even harmless incidents can set off a venter who is roiling inside like a volcano with the ongoing pressures of life. When those pressures are triggered, out spews a caustic tirade. Anger becomes a venter's default setting, with his or her internal filter always viewing life as unfair, unreasonable, or unjust. When enraged, this person feels vindicated, powerful, and in control. In the rush of adrenaline, the venter may feel empowered and energized, which can become addictive. Treating others as verbal punching bags is a classic sign of toxic behavior. I think that this is one that absolutely we all know that this is a toxic behavior. And if we have someone that is in our life that exhibits these behaviors and is this way, I mean, you can feel it. You know that it's toxic. And you know, that's a very hard one, because then again, there's the eggshells, not wanting to set them off, not wanting to like trigger anything. And the people who have this within them, that this is how they are, they've got to seek help for themselves. And a lot of times people don't, because they don't think they need help. They think everyone else is the problem, because they're pointing the fingers, blaming, because they're a toxic person. And so toxic people blame other people for everything, for their triggers. It's quite amazing. The next one is the know-it-all. I resonate with this one. I think a lot of us can resonate with this one. I am not so much an angry venter. I am more of a silent, back away, go into my shell, go into my closet, hide, like get very quiet. That is kind of my way. And so, but that can be just as much a toxic way of being, you know, because it's also not dealing with problems, it's running away from them. And so that can also be toxic behaviors towards other people. But it is a response. It's a way of protecting ourselves. The next one is the know-it-all. So this person believes that he or she is right about everything all of the time. It doesn't seem to matter what the topic of discussion is. It could be a restaurant, the movies, a news thing that you saw. All of his or her pronouncements are correct and accurate. There is no room for a differing opinion or belief. If this person is always right, then you must be wrong. Healthy relationships allow for two people to be respected and affirmed, regardless of differing viewpoints. The know it all, however, feels in competition with others, always needing to win, a sibling who one ups another sibling. A parent that competes with a child, a supervisor who targets an employee. I mean, they just always have to be right and one up people. For some reason, competitiveness is triggered in the relationship when the know it all feels threatened by the other person. I'll finish. Consistently interacting with someone who must always be right is extremely frustrating. If there's a difference of opinion and you're proven right, this person will shrug off that situation as if it's not really that important. However, if you're proven wrong, you hear about it often. You may disregard your own decisions and give in to whatever the other person wants, whenever you're dealing with someone like that. So I have been this way. I can recognize that I do have a competitive way of having conversation. Sometimes this has been one of my, I'm really trying not to be this way, working to not be this way, but I can recognize that in any conversation with people, especially my husband, especially people that I love, like whatever side, and it can be anything. Like I'll want to take the opposing regardless. Or and two, like I see so many different sides. And so like if someone is saying, oh well this is how it is, I'm like, well, it could be that, and I'll take the opposite side. And then I have to like prove, I have to like make my point and be right about my side. It's I'm learning that I don't have to prove anything. I don't have to explain anything. I don't have to know it all. I don't, because I don't know it all. And I'm so open to learning. And whenever we come to relationships, being more open to learning and not knowing it all, it's just so much better. But yeah, that was one that I resonated with. So then there is the Intimidator. The Intimidator asserts control by issuing threats. Sometimes the threats are issued at the top of their lungs, and other times they are conveyed through a whisper or a look. Whether blatant or veiled, the threat is understood. A person who threatens another always creates a toxic environment. So I don't know if you know anyone like this who like is threatening. Um, but if you've ever experienced that, it doesn't even have to be loud. It could just be a look or a whisper or the look like you get from like an authority figure if you're doing something and they just have to look at you. Like that is like they're trying to intimidate you to behave. There are two main types of intimidators. The first is all bark and no bite. They deliver dire proclamations of what they're going to do, but never actually get around to doing them. And so that's like a parent who's constantly like telling their kids, "I'm going to count 3. You better do what I say." And then you get to 3, and you're like, "I'm going to count one and a half." It's like a whole lot of bark, but no bite. The other type of intimidator means the words he says and backs them up with action. These are the types of people that others fear. The consequences the intimidator metes out are always more severe than the situation warrants. And so that's a big thing. This in turn breeds resentment, bitterness, and anger. So those who, are just more severe than what is necessary. So then there is the egotist. Egotist. I recognize myself in this one. The motto for this person is, "It's all about me." Egotists have an insatiable desire to demonstrate their own self-importance and enlist others to boost their self-esteem. With no need for humility, these people are most often described as prideful, arrogant, boastful, and conceited. Being self-centered is generally agreed to be an off-putting quality, but these people don't really care because they are, well, self-centered. Simply put, the egotist needs to look good, feel superior to others, and they feed off other people's validation. Um, I can recognize some of myself in this, at different times in my life. But I also know people like this. It's not hard to recognize people like this in our lives. And sometimes recognizing it in someone else, other people are mirrors for us. That's a very important thing to recognize, that when we see behaviors in other people, a lot of times those behaviors are something within ourselves. And that's why we see it so clearly. So let's see. And so here's some things about an ego to have a hard time with this one. Egotist. In a crowded room, the self-absorbed person will somehow always be the center of attention, sure to be seen and heard by as many others as possible. He will always adopt a posture of dominance, never deference. That one's not been me. Like, I don't want to be the center of attention. I don't want to be seen or in a crowded room. I'm usually like a wallflower. I'm like, don't talk to me. So it's like we can have certain parts of things, and then others may not resonate. Dominates conversation. So self-absorbed people are unable to go very long without directing the conversation towards their favorite subject, themselves, without any apparent curiosity about your experience or opinions. Egotists may nod politely for a short time while you talk, but they're waiting for the moment to jump in and start bragging again. I'm sure we all know people like that. Top priority are the egoist's needs, desires, and goals, not yours. This person will take advantage of you for the sake of his own agenda. Despite the egotist's lip service about caring and concern, you don't really matter to them. So I think we probably all know people like this, and it's like the people you think about that are just arrogant, boastful, conceited, just likes the attention, likes all that. So then there is the next one is the drama queen or the crisis king. I can recognize myself in some of this, but I have definitely had people like this in my life that like it is very toxic. And when we have people like this in our lives, a lot of times we can get sucked into their stuff, especially if we are codependent people. We can be pulled in to other people's drama and their emergencies. So the drama queen or king, crisis king. This is someone who will phone you and begins breathlessly blurting out the latest dramatic details from his or her life with all the urgency of a 911 call. It's another really big problem to fume and fuss about, another calamity to fret over. It's all too much, the person exclaims. I can't take much more of this. My life is crashing down around me and I'm on the verge of a total breakdown. Again, just like last week. I don't know if you know anyone like this. I have known people like this where it's just one thing after another. And I can also recognize that I have been in cycles of this myself where I've experienced a lot of drama in my life, and I've created a lot of drama for myself and being wrapped up in drama. And then as you speak it, it's a cycle that we can get into. The most mundane situations turn into mayhem. Someone whose daily existence is one upheaval or explosion or emotional outburst after another. Someone with whom you spend a lot of time listening to their side of endless dramas and have the feeling it might be dangerous to offer a dissenting opinion. Call them drama queens or crisis kings, and, and call them a real challenge to deal with. They derive a sense of power from being at the center of an intense storm and frequently whips one up when things get too quiet. They're known to orchestrate conflicts between people, including you, or insert themselves into ready-made ones. It's like they love the drama. Their life is filled with drama. Everything that happens is drama. Like the most simple things, like they can just create drama around it. Like it's so fascinating to have experienced this with people in my life where and I could see so clearly that their life is drama because they are the drama in their life. They're making everything very dramatic. And it's just not. And it's hard to help another person to see and to recognize that. And like I said, I've been stuck in that myself at different times in my life where everything, it does feel like drama and it does feel like a lot. And it can be challenging to separate from. Then there is, but that is very toxic. If you have someone in your life that is always filled with drama, that is just a very toxic way, especially being the person who is receiving so much of it. That's where boundaries come in. And many codependents are in that state of just dealing with other people's drama. So the put down artist, words can be incredibly hurtful. As you know, if you've spent much time around a put down artist, these toxic people just use words and tone of voice to degrade the value of another person. They seek to bring themselves up by pushing others down. The worse, I'm sorry, the worse the put down artist feels about him or herself, the worse the verbal put downs become. So the one giving the insults gets the ego boost while the recipient gets dropped down a notch or two. Yeah, it's not cool to like be with people who are always like putting down other people. Sometimes a put down artist uses sarcasm or biting humor to deliver harsh words, but rude comments couched as jokes have the same effect. They hurt. Humor can be an especially clever tactic because the offending individual sidesteps responsibility by saying, "It's just a joke, don't be so sensitive." But inconsiderate or mean spirited barbs, no matter how well disguised, still leave you feeling diminished and disparaged. So, that is a very toxic trait to be putting people down, you know, um, just to and I witness it a lot. Like, this is not one of mine. Like, I don't feel like this is something that I've not had this toxic trait in my life because I don't like it. I've been around people who do it, and I think that society, like, there's so much judgment in it. It's like you just see someone and then you just hear people making little comments about like either their clothes or what they look like or what they're wearing or like clothes. That is, I said the same thing in three different ways. Their hair, their weight, their just whatever we can judge one another with. You know, if you have someone who it has this toxic trait about them, I mean, they just can say and joke, and that's the sad thing, is it always comes out, oh, I'm just joking. You know, if you do say something about it, they always say that they're joking. And it's just kind of not cool. Then there is the moral authority. So a moral authority person is someone who launches into sermons, regardless of the reason, using condemning language with religious themes. They use these lectures as a way to pontificate on the faults of another person. To them, even small mistakes have spiritual ramifications. The moral authority person is all about fire and brimstone, a religious chicken little for whom the spiritual sky is always falling. Self-appointed authorities bring up God not to be instructive about his character attributes, but to coerce compliance with what they want. These individuals believe that they are standing in God's place when they're really usurping it. With this one, I'm like, I recognize myself as being a religious, spiritual person. And so I can't say that I've not been this. This may be one that I'm not able to recognize about myself. I'm always open to seeing and learning, like, because if I am like this with people, I definitely don't want to be. I don't want to, like, you know, start preaching sermons to people in ways that are coercive, you know. Um, Hopefully I'm not like that. I don't feel like I resonate with that one, but there's always a chance. This one I definitely resonate with. This is the emotional roller coaster. So, do you have people in your life who are emotional roller coasters? If so, you know the challenge with this, because I am one and I have people around me who are also emotional roller coasters. And I think honestly that most people, if we're not intentionally working on and open to like seeing our emotions and like wanting to regulate our emotions, then we're all pretty much on a roller coaster, in other people's lives. So the emotional roller coaster person in your life is a constant bone jarring, whiplash inducing ride, rocking you back and forth, up and down. These people are in continual motion of mood swings, high highs and low lows, often taking those around them on this not so thrilling ride. Do you know people who are like that, who are high and then low? They're so just on top of the world and like doing, and excited, and then all of a sudden it drops. It can be very difficult. Emotional regulation allows people to monitor their moods and moderate them for their own benefit and the benefit of others. But roller coaster people do not regulate their emotions. Some people are unable to manage their emotions due to physical conditions. Others have psychological disorders, such as manic depressive disorder, that make emotional regulation very challenging. I like this though. He says, yet I have found that emotional roller coaster people often make a choice not to regulate their feelings and moods. Generally, if they feel it, they express it, regardless of how that emotion affects others. The intensity and the unchecked nature of those emotions bring others on a wild ride that never seems to end. So it can be very difficult. I have experienced major mood disorders in my past, and I've been medicated for them and all that kind of stuff. I've been in the hospital. Like I've gone through all of the mental illness and roller coaster riding, and I am so much more balanced today because I see and I understand and I recognize all these things about myself, and I am working to regulate myself. Whenever emotions come up, I'm able to sit with them, process them, look at them, understand them, and work through them, where I'm not bringing that all out into the world to affect other people and being toxic for other people. Because it can be very challenging being with other people who are not regulating or working on regulating their emotions, and their emotions are just all over the place and you just don't know what you're going to get. It's a roller coaster. So been there, done that, experienced it myself, with other people. I think we all do. So then the next one is the pessimist. Why, we probably all know pessimists in our lives. This is one. I'm not typically a pessimistic person. Let me see if I've got just like two more. I can't remember. Okay, this one is like just a negative person. So if you spend time with people who are a half glass empty outlook on life, you know how they drag others down with them. Life has a way of bringing heartaches and headaches that wear us down, causing some people to develop a cynical outlook on life. Many individuals experience disappointments and frustrations that challenge their ability to maintain a hopeful and sunny disposition. So, I mean, that's like all of us. We just all have challenging lives and situations that happen, you know. And so it can cause us to be pessimistic. I have experienced this in my life where I'm not a, a pessimist. Like I an optimist. I see the good in this life, but there have been seasons in my life where I have been pulled into the negativity and I've been very pessimistic, and that is all I see is all the negative. And then you bring that outlook to other people because you complain, and it's just ugh. Other people, it seems, are born with a negative outlook on life, always assuming that things will go wrong and everyone is out to get them. Many people grew up in a household where skepticism and cynicism prevailed. These people carry that defeatist, downbeat attitude into adulthood. So that's the thing, is like so many people were just born into this world, into the families that we're born into, and a lot of times these things, they just become part of how we are. And it's great to recognize, like, you don't have to continue being a pessimist. If you are, it is a trait that you can change. If you find yourself seeing everything negatively, you don't have to stay stuck in that. You can change that. Gloomy people create problems for themselves and the people they're around. By seeing life from a negative perspective, they invite complications and conflicts. They expect bad things to happen. And because of that expectation, that's often the outcome. If we're constantly expecting and thinking negatively and all of the bad, we're just bringing that into our life. That is what we're going to see. That's what we're going to be surrounded with. A pessimistic perspective is indeed poisonous to relationships and environments. When someone constantly speaks in a defeatist manner, others can begin to speak in the same manner. And so that's why it's so important to watch, the people that we hang around, and because they will influence us. If you are regularly in the presence of someone who spreads discontent and negativity, guard your heart and mind. Don't let another person's foul mood put you in a foul mood. And it can be very difficult. It really can. I know that there are days where I just wake up not feeling well, and I'm like, I don't even want to be around anyone else. I just want to be in a cave, because I don't want to affect other people negatively. I don't want anything that's negative coming up within me to spill out and cause another person who is susceptible to be negative. So it's just important to recognize these things about ourselves and other people, that it is very toxic to be around negative people, because they will start to, if we're not whole in ourselves, it can pull us into their negativity. And, that's very challenging. Then there is the guilter. I think we got two more. This and another one. The guilter. This is one that I can recognize that I have been a guilter. And I have had people in my life who have guilted me. So this is definitely one that we do with each other. Is for guilters, the most important person is the one they can blame for anything and everything. Without a person to accuse, guilters would have to face responsibility for their own decisions and failures. They reason, you're responsible for my pain, so why shouldn't you feel pain yourself? If you are responsible for my pain, then I should have the right to tell you what and how much you need to do to make up for my pain. I mean, how many people in our lives like cause us pain, and it's like they're responsible for me feeling pain. But guilters know nothing of true guilt because they avoid it themselves. They rely on false guilt, manufacturing whatever reasons are needed to keep the other person in line and willing to accept the burden of guilt. Once weighed down with guilt, the other person is much easier to control. There's also, like, with the guilt, just guilting people, causing people to feel guilty for the things that they do and their actions, and just constantly like calling people out on, and just using guilt as a manipulative way to get people to do the things that you want them to do. I mean, it's so unhealthy. It's such a controlling thing, and I think that codependents use guilt, especially because especially with addicts and stuff, it's like you want to guilt the other person into changing their behaviors. So the last one is the addict. So I am, and I have many around me. I think that if we are not aware, mindful of our behaviors and the things that we do that are destructive to ourselves, because we are all addicts of something. We just are. If God is not number one in our life, then something is number one in our life. And it can be a person, it can be a thing, it can be a place, it can be just be so many different things. So addicts are crazy makers, raising a dust cloud of chaos and confusion wherever they go. People suffering from substance abuse disorders or other types of addiction will say and do nearly anything to cover their need and their actions. They will distort the truth and invent false realities. This often leaves others disoriented and unsure if maybe they themselves might be the ones with the problem. Addicts anxiously plot out the next encounter with their addiction, fearful and unsure of either the certainty of each occurrence or its ultimate effectiveness. If you're addicted to anything, like you wake up and you want it. You can't wait to get it. You if if you're having some family event, it's like you have to think your way around, like, how are you going to get it? And people are annoying, and like it creates, it's such a mental thing. They live lives of uncertainty, which becomes subtly and overtly communicated to others. Friends and family members of addicts also live in uncertainty, unsure what the next crisis will be and what it will require. I mean, that is a huge one. Like living with other people who are addicts, like you just never know what's going to happen or how. It's just chaotic. Those in a relationship with someone struggling with addiction end up struggling themselves as their lives become entangled with the consequences of that addiction. And I think that all of us in this world during these days probably have experienced addiction within ourselves or have addicts around us, and we know how crazy it can get. Sometimes what you notice are the consequences of addictive behavior, such as erratic decisions, unreliability, irritability, dramatic mood swings, and dishonesty. Um, so these are descriptions of toxic people. um, so chapter 2 is like this is just chapter 1, just the types. So out of all of the ones that I've shared, like what do you resonate with? What toxic traits do you have? And do you recognize some of these traits in the people that you were friends with or that you're married to or that you have in your family or, whatever the case may be? Because we don't have to continue living in toxic environments with toxic people. And that is where, like, so how do we deal with these toxic people? And one of the first things is, I feel one of the first things is recognizing our own toxic traits, seeing which toxic traits we are bringing to other people. Because a lot of times our toxic traits can create that toxic dance with people because a lot of times they're just responding to our toxicity. And so I think the first step is really, where am I toxic? How am I showing up in my relationships? What am I doing to create chaos and to put other people down and to be controlling? Or, we have to first take accountability for ourselves for where we are toxic. So I'm going to, this last little bit, it's like a list of telltale signs of a toxic person. So this is This will let you know. These are 11 warning signs of a toxic person. This can either be yourself. Are you a toxic person, or are you with a toxic person? I think we all are. If we're not working on ourselves in these ways, then we probably are, and we're with people who are. But it's becoming aware and stopping the dance, recognizing it whenever we're being in these behaviors. So number one, truth telling is not a high priority. Even slight variations on what you know to be the truth or careful omission of facts is enough to put the person on your watch list. um, Shoot, I'm already at an hour. I kind of don't know that I want to keep on going. I think I'll make a second video with the telltale signs of a toxic person, and go into that so I can end this one. But I think that it's very important to see these things about ourselves, to not always point our fingers outside of ourselves and think that everyone around us is toxic and we're not, because I think that we all have some of these toxic qualities about us, and it's coming to see them about ourselves and doing something different. So I'll share another video with the second part of the book on how to deal with it and how to do something different, so that we can change these relationships in our life, because we don't have to live this way. We don't need to be all toxic to each other. We need to bring love to each other and compassion and forgiveness and understanding. And it's just becoming aware. So if you have any questions, let me know. And this is How to Deal with Toxic People. And it's by Gregory L. Jantz with Keith Wall. And I'll put a picture. I don't know. I'll do something so that you can find it if you want it. It's just a very quick book. I mean, it's only 100 pages. So I read it in like 2 hours yesterday. All right. I hope this helps someone out there, and you're not alone if you are experiencing this. I do. I think we all do. So thanks for listening. If you did, I appreciate it.